Welcome back to Community Conversations. I'm your host, Steve Mantis, and my guest today is Mac Squire. Mac has just written a book called Dynamic Forest, and he's here today to share a little bit more information about that.
Let's go ahead and do that, Steve.
So, Mac, when we left on break here, you were still kind of in Newfoundland. You'd come here and gone back with your son. When did you end up coming to this neck of the woods?
I arrived in Thunder Bay in 1980. It's arrived in Ontario in 78.
Okay.
And I worked with a Duncan Naismith and a Frank Robinson of Abitibi to negotiate the first forest management agreement in Ontario. That's an agreement between the province and the industry, where the industry took over renewal responsibilities instead of management responsibilities.
And you were working with Abitibi at that time?
I worked with Abitibi at that time.
I spent one winter working for Abitibi in Camp 40 up
Oh,
north of Beardmore.
in the Auden.
Yeah, that was 1974 when I was just a young pup.
Hmm.
Yeah. So how does that work with that first management agreement for the forest? That's with our provincial government.
Yes. Basically, the company took on the responsibility of renewing the forest after it logged, or after burn if necessary. There was provincial money put into it because the companies were paying stumpage and land rental fees. So the province said it's fair that we put some money back in. And they also paid for the renewal. Say if we were planting trees, they paid for the planting of the trees. And if we were doing herbicide spraying, which we were doing and still do, they paid for that as well. So basically the money was put in by the province. However, in the latter years, they set up trust funds where the part of the stumpage that was paid by the company went into the trust fund, and that then funded the renewal. It was a much more secure source of revenue for renewal.
Rather than the politicians or bureaucrats deciding which year how much money went where. And
the first 5 years of the FMAs were very frustrating in that regard. But gradually we realized that, look, we've got to do something to firm up the availability of the money. Otherwise this is just not going to work.
So it's been your whole career working in the forest, being a forester. Why did you decide to write this book?
Going back to the 1970s, Canadian citizens began to feel like I felt early in my career, that things were not right. That I think the main concern with the public was that, is the forest being renewed adequately? Are we getting a forest that's being sustained? Mm-hmm. I was a brunt of a lot of their concern, and I was talked about in the media, et cetera. And
you personally?
Oh yeah, and other foresters too, and
okay.
for a good reason.
Mm-hmm.
We were seen as the people that were accountable for what was going on.
Okay.
So, fast forward, it's still going on. And that's, 40 years now.
Right.
It's going on. In the meantime, a lot of the public criticism started to get to governments and to the industry through various means, lobby groups, et cetera, and changing legislation. I might add, improving legislation, which made accountabilities very clear. And the industry, way back in the early 80s, began to say, look, yeah, we can clean up our act and we can make improvements. And to a large extent, that's been done today. But what really started to change things was when we began to do independent audits. First, the government said we're going to appoint the auditors, and they did. But then these various lobby groups decided, yeah, well, maybe this is not independent enough. So they started forming audit groups. And now a company is subject to audits from the Crown, which are mandatory, but it also volunteers to get some of those lobby group to do independent audits. So there's a collection of audits available. If a company does not respond to the audit's criticisms, then there are penalties to be paid, and some of those penalties can be very severe. So that's where I stand today on it. And I think there's been vast improvement made.
And so, coming back to that, what was that burning fire that led you to write this book? What was there a message, or you just kind of want to share kind of that 40, 50 years of time spent in the bush?
I said that the public's concern has continued. The lobby groups are still out there.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I know myself from my own experience that things have changed considerably.
Mm-hmm.
The companies have improved their acts. Hey, there's still bad actors out there, and they can't be ignored. But the penalties are there through the audits and through the Crown and fines, etc. So I said to myself, I started writing articles first for the Chronicle Journal newspaper in Thunder Bay. I'll start with the first couple of articles I wrote. They were about the concern about forest fires
Mm-hmm.
and the danger around Thunder Bay and other northern communities. We're sitting in the center of a boreal forest that's prone to some pretty severe fire on occasion. And we're not immune to it here.
That's for sure.
So that was the beginning, and I had a couple of other articles that I wanted to write after that. And I saw opportunity to communicate more directly with a much larger public if I continued with those articles. So the Chronicle agreed, and we were getting pretty good reception from the reading public. Gradually, I began to get emails and street conversations with people. Hey, this is not getting to the right people. We need to get to Southern Ontario. We need to get to other provinces. You should be writing this stuff into a book. So I didn't feel like I was book material. But gradually, some influential people who I said, oh, maybe these people know what they're talking about. One of the main persons was, unfortunately, the late John Naismith, former dean at Lakehead University, dean of forestry faculty. He was really insistent that, look back, you have a good message here. You've got some good facts to back up your message. I think you should really put this into a book, and I'm willing to help you. So
we need to take another break, Mac. Please hang on, and we'll be right back. Please stay with us.
thank you.